Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for checking this out. Today we're going to be creating a satchel bag that allows you to store items. This is a kind of like a brand new idea, so hopefully we don't break it too much. Thank you to Pat for suggesting this and asking about it. So here we've got a satchel. We also have 4 icons. So you can see that we have a sword, 2 apples, and a pumpkin, and they're all interactable in full size over here. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and grab these and connect them together, and go ahead and make this interactive, grabbable, and physics material. Let's go with softwood. So there we can see that falls, maybe fall a little bit less hard. Yeah, it's probably about as good as it's gonna get. So we'll stick with that. All right, so we got our properties here. Let's go ahead and make it sticky. We could anchor it to a specific spot, but we're just gonna let people stick it wherever they want on their torso. They can make a fanny pack, a backpack, that's up to them, side pack. I guess that's called a satchel at that point. Avatar is attachable only by the owner. Avatar attachable is sticky. Perfect, this all looks good. So now let's go ahead and try it out. So I grab the satchel and we can put it on our waist like that. Very nice. We can also fanny pack it up. And if we move around, you can see it comes with us. So very cool, even allowing us to use our other hands. So grab a sword, grab a pumpkin. Now let's go ahead and start working on making this work. Okay, so first thing is first, we're going to want to create a couple more objects. So grab this, press up to get to properties, and then right here, you'll notice you can go inside of the object. And from inside the object, we are going to grab and create 4 triggers. Actually, 5 triggers, come to think of it. Okay, so let's go gizmos, trigger, and scale this up. We want this to be relatively small, so it's not easily triggered unless you really want it. There we go, got another one. And then we'll do a big one. I really actually should have, had I thought about it. So I kind of want this to trigger right in this area. So this is where putting an object in will take effect. So once again, I'm making this relatively small so that way it doesn't trigger accidentally. So let's go into the properties of this trigger. Try that out, make it big for you. We're going to trigger on objects tagged, and they're going to be tagged item, I-T-E-M, enter. Okay, so when an object that's tagged item hits this, we're going to run a script. So now we'll come back to the script in a second, but this is going to send an event to said object. So it'll be pretty simple script running inside of this one. And these 4 are actually not going to have any script. What we're going to do is go in here and trigger on objects, trigger on players. And so that should work by default, right? Let's go check all of them. All right, enabled, triggers on players, perfect. Okay, so that's great. Now that we've got all of that set up, we are ready to start scripting. So let's exit out of here. And we're gonna go ahead and close out of this. And the first thing I wanna do is work on the big one. So let's go grab a script. And this script, we're going to call it Satchel Trig. Okay, got it. Next up, when trigger is entered by object. Now what's going to happen? When the trigger is entered by the object, we are actually going to send an event to, guess what? That object. So if we grab the duplicate, we can make it so it sends it not to itself, but to the object that it's triggered by. So this way it's affecting whichever object gets hit. And we're going to go ahead and call this one enter satchel. Okay, enter satchel. If I'm spelling this wrong, my apologies. I'm just not completely sure. So here's a nice close-up for you. So when trigger is entered with object, send event, enter satchel to the object. And that is all we need to do here. Very, very simple script. So now let's go ahead and implement that on here. So once again, we grab this, go into properties, go inside the object, go to our trigger, attach the script, Satchel trigger, and close out of that. Objects tagged item, perfect. So close out of there, close out of there, close out of there. And now going to double check that we've got the right name. So it's called Satchel. Okay. Now let's work on our next script. So grab this one. Now this script, what are we going to call this? We're going to call this one item. And this script is going to work for any item. So when world is started, we're going to start by creating a position. So we're going to grab a vector. We're not going to worry about the rotation since it won't be visible at this position. And we'll just call this org position. That's our original position. And so at the very beginning of the world, we want to set our original position to value, which will be position of object self. All right, there we go. When world is started, set original position to position of self. Now that we got that, the next thing we're going to do is when event is received, and we're going to have the event Satchel is going to come in. So when Satchel is received, we want to move to the origin position on self, and we want to hide self. Okay, so when event Satchel is received, move to original position, hide self, and disable object, I think is the one we want, right? Yep, so then we're going to go ahead and disable self. So this will make it invisible and not interactable. So perfect. Next up, we want to go ahead and make it retrievable. So this, we're going to be using a connecting event. So connect to event. Okay, put that under when world is started, connect, and we're going to go through that in just a second. But the first thing we need to do is create a new variable, and this is going to be an object variable, and it's going to be tagged the icon trigger. Icon trigger. Okay, so an icon trigger is interacted by a player. So we're going to go connect trigger entered. Yep. To the local event custom, and we'll call this retrieve. Okay. Connect, and I'm thinking this is where this goes. If I messed it up, we'll fix it in a minute, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Okay, so then we're going to tag the icon trigger. Then when the trigger is entered on the icon, then we're going to send an event to ourself called retrieve. So when event retrieve is received, just got to make sure spelling is correct, otherwise you're going to have all sorts of issues. So very important. So when event retrieve is received, we're going to move to the, and you know what? We will receive this with a player ID, and so we'll call this player. Yes, so theoretically, this should be sent. If this doesn't work and doesn't send the player ID with, what we're going to end up doing is creating another really simple script, just like the other one you saw for the main one, that will send over the player's position of their hand, or we can send over their player ID. one or the other. So when retrieve with player is received, action move to position. Let's go down a little bit. Position of player. And we're going to do the position of their right hand. So we're going to assume people are right-handed. Sorry for left-handed people. And then we're going to copy this to get the player ID and on self. So when event retrieve is received, move to right-hand position of player on self. And now what we need to do is re-enable these objects. So we need to show self and we need to enable self. So when retrieve with player is received, move to right-hand position of player on self, show self, enable self. And that should just about do it. There is probably some booleans we need to set. So let's go ahead and think about that. Okay, so we need to show the icon object. That's what we forgot. Okay, so we need to create a new variable. This is going to be an object, and this one's going to be called icon. Okay, and so when enter Satchel is received, I'm wondering if we might not even need to create a boolean since we're going to just have this enter and exit. Like that's a very boolean itself. Let's go to hide object down here and show object right here. So we're going to go then show icon. So once it enters, it'll show the icon, and once it leaves, we're going to hide the icon. So theoretically that will work. Okay, let's go test it out. I'm expecting there to be issues. I mean, things don't normally work right off the bat unless you do a lot of pre-testing. So here goes nothing. Let's go ahead and start with the sword. Properties. Zoom out a little bit. Under properties, we're going to attach the script item. Under attributes, we're going to make sure it's tagged item. Okay, sword is tagged item, and icon trigger as well as the icon. So we're going to come over here, and now to get inside the satchel, once again, we're going to grab it, hit the properties, hit the go inside of. We're then going to zoom in, grab our icon as well as our trigger, open up these properties for both. So let's go ahead and start with the trigger. And icon trigger, check. And we're then going to grab this one, check. Boom, okay. So that's super simple. Now let's go ahead and make this invisible. So visibility is off by default. And now let's back out of here, close out of here, close out of here. I'm like really expecting something to go wrong. I'm just super nervous. Let's go ahead and grab our satchel. All right, and now we're gonna grab our sword. And, oh, I remember what I forgot to do. Okay, so what I forgot to do is I want to make it so it happens when the player releases, because what's going to happen is the moment I touch this, it's going to teleport, but it's still going to be attached to my hand, which doesn't work. So the way we would do this to make it actually work would be to drop it on the trigger. And so there it teleports away, and there it is, and then theoretically I touch it, and the sword's back. But yeah, see, because it doesn't happen on release event, the moment it comes back, it's like a little glitchy. So we've almost got it working, and as you can see, when I touch it, it's very, very glitchy. So that is definitely not what we want to do. So let's go ahead and fix that. Yay, I like it when I figure out what was causing me that stress. Why was I worried? This is why, because I knew I had forgotten that. All right, so let's go back into the item. And now what we need to do, this is why we needed a Boolean, is because we need to be able to check. So when event retrieve is received, so retrieve is all working properly. When event enter satchel is received, this is actually just supposed to set because we're on the item, so what we actually want to use is when player lets go of the item. So when object is released by player, an object is released by player, this is when we want all this to happen. So what we want to do is move all of this down here. Okay, So move to position, hide self, disable self. I'm not sure if order matters, but I like that order. So move to original position. But what happens when it enters the satchel? Well, that's a great question. We are going to create a Boolean called, we'll call it in radius, question mark. Okay, it doesn't save the question mark, doesn't even matter. Okay, so by default, in radius will be set to false, but when we enter, when the enter satchel is received, we will set in radius to true. Now, there is one issue we're gonna have to go ahead and correct. So let's go ahead and start with that. But we need another event, which is the exit event. So we need to create a new event, which is going to be called when event is received. And this one is going to be called exit satchel. Exit satchel area. So that will make that a little bit easier. Okay, so exit satchel area. And then in that case, once it leaves that spot there, we're going to then have the in radius set back to false. Boolean input false. So when event enter satchel is received, set in radius to true. When event exit satchel is received, set in radius to false. And now we need to go set it up to do that, which we actually don't really need to do too much. We just hop into the satchel trigger script here. Let's go ahead and make that big. Okay. And then we're going to grab when trigger is exited by object. So we have when trigger is entered by object, and now we want to send event to said object, and this event will be called exit satchel area. There we have it. Perfect. Okay, so that does all that we need to do over here. We come back over here, and let's go review our script. When world is started, set original position of self, connect icon, trigger to local event, retrieve, done. When event enter satchel is received, set in radius to true. When exit satchel is received, set it to false. So it'll only trigger if it's within that area. But then when we do this, we have to run an if statement to check our Boolean. So we're gonna go ahead and say if the in radius equals true, then we'll do all of this. So then we'll just drag this over here and drag that down there, and there, and there. It can be kind of difficult to indent, but I've done it so much it's gotten a little bit easier. So sorry if I make it look easy and it's more difficult, but you'll get it. Okay, if in radius Boolean's true, then action, move to position, hide self, disable self, show icon. Perfect. Now that makes all of this available. So the question is, does the icon trigger still cause this to happen when it's not inside, right? So what we need to do is, when this happens, create one more Boolean. So this is going to be called in satchel. And this is going to make it so that this only happens if we know the item is in the satchel. So set in satchel to be true, and then if in satchel is true, then we can do all of this. Oops. See, even I have trouble with it. No one should be worried about how difficult it is to indent. Okay, so if in satchel equals true, move to right hand of player, show self, enable self, hide icon, and also, now that it's left, we need to set it to be false again. So set in satchel to be Boolean false. Wonderful. Okay, now I feel really confident in this. So if something doesn't work, then my confidence sucks. But here we go. Let's go ahead and test this out. We're going to go ahead and grab our satchel. We should actually probably reset the world, but this should still 10. Oh, yeah, see, that doesn't work, but we should probably reset the world so this starts from the beginning. But as you can see, it's in, and then I let go, and it teleports in, then I press the thing, and it comes back, and I can grab it, and it's gone, and I put it in, then I let go, and it's in the satchel. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy with this. So that's amazing, right? Like, That's actually, I'm really happy with that. But here's the thing, you can't just drop it into the satchel now. Like, that was kind of a cool idea, right? But you have to put it in, let go, it appears. I could do that all day. I can do that all day. Okay. Looks like the reappearing isn't exactly accurate, so let's go ahead and make this slightly better, because it's reappearing at my hand, but my hand is right here, which is not where we want it. Well, it is where we want it, but it's not using the hand properly, because unless I move my hands really fast, it's going to glitch out. So what we should do is make it so it moves slightly ajar from where we are. So then I'm going to go create a new variable, and this is going to be a vector, and this will be called adjust. And so this will allow us to adjust for every single object. So the sword might be slightly different adjustment than like the apples or the pumpkin, which might not need any adjustment. So then what we're going to do is, when it's retrieved, move to this position. But what we're actually going to do is do a little bit of math. And I'm going to, just so I don't lose this, use this if statement to save this condition. And then we're going to create a plus sign. And we're going to grab this here, remove the if statement, and grab our adjust. And so since these are both vectors, it should just add them together and then move it to that position. So I don't want this to be too far off, and let's go ahead and try it out. All right, let's go ahead and set this to be 3 and 3 and let's see if that works. All right, so we grab our satchel, grab our sword, put the sword in the satchel, grab our sword back out. I think we're having some weird, you know what I think it is? I think because the gravity is turning back on, we're having kind of like a, that is really funny though. Yeah, okay, so I think I figured out what it is. Let's go ahead and try this again. And in this case, this is what I wanted to use, was set simulated, not disable. So let's remove disable and then use set simulated to true, and then, or excuse me, is this, nope, this one's false. And then we scroll down to the bottom and then remove enable self and do set simulated to true. Okay, so theoretically this is making it so it doesn't have gravity and all that until here, which is more than what we were doing with just enabling and disabling. So let's go ahead and try that out. Reset and come down here, grab our satchel, grab our sword, place it in, pull it out. Okay, the teleport was too far away, but let's see if we can. And grab. Okay, so now, wasn't bad. Let's see if we can get that to spawn right above this, which should just be a matter of getting those numbers right. Okay, so that is definitely the wrong direction to go. Let's go into, oh, or maybe I just didn't adjust it. I probably left it at the same number from before, which I already knew was too much. Yes, that was the problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and adjust this down to 1. And close. And try it out. Satchel. Grab sword. Place it in. Pull it out. And, oh, that's exactly where I want it to fall out. That is so perfect. So we grab it, and it falls out of the sky right to here. Doesn't do any more glitches. So we've solved the object. So I think I like that. We're gonna go ahead and set that as the default. So that was 1 and 3. So if we go into our item, we can set the default position to fall from under variables and change this to be, oh, that's why that wasn't doing anything. Set the adjust to be 1 and 3 up. Okay. Theoretically, that just allows it to fall out of the sky right next to the player. I think it's going to vary depending on what direction they're looking, but that's really cool. Okay, so we've got one of them set up. Let's go ahead and set up the other 3 objects, because now that we have all this, it is a cinch to get this going. So we're going to hit properties, and then we're going to go hit properties and hit properties. Okay, I've got some big old property windows here. Now let's go into our satchel object, hit the properties as well, go inside of the satchel, and the main thing we need in here are these 2 objects. So we're going to go ahead and start with the yellow apple, and yellow apple is this one on the far right. So we'll go ahead and enlarge this and shrink this one. Alrighty, go ahead, attach item, and the item needs the trigger icon. Boom, and now we just need the icon. Go in here, properties. So here is our object, the icon object. Drag that into here. Perfect. We're going to leave all of the other attributes the same, and then we just need to go into here and set it to be invisible by default. Perfect. And now let's go work on the red apple. And someone's probably thinking, did you set it up as item? I did. I actually set up those 3 first, and then I built the sword and forgot to set it. So that was actually probably really good because I got to demonstrate it. So we got that one set up as well. And let's go in and close out the visibility on this one. Perfect. All right. Now we can leave this object and test it out. I am a very bit nervous, but look at this. Satchel looks really clean right now, and we can attach it to ourselves. We can grab our sword, put it inside. There we go. Now the sword's in our object. We can click on it. So while wearing it, being able to attach and unattach objects is pretty cool. Although I think that one didn't go in. I definitely recommend doing it this way or making the trigger bigger if you want it to be more like usable while attached. Now we'll grab our apple, put the apple in. Okay. Because you have to be very careful not to hit the trigger when you're putting items in. So let's go grab the apple. Or maybe I just need to make the trigger bigger. Yep, definitely need to make the trigger bigger. That one managed to get inside, but these ones are just not able to get inside there. Okay, yeah, so this is just a need to make the insert trigger bigger. But look at this, retrieve apple, retrieve pumpkin. Boop, boop, boop. Retrieve sword. Ah, I feel like a magician. This is amazing. Okay, so let's just quickly make the trigger bigger. And I'm really happy with this. I hope this is gonna help you all make your like RPG sims and whatnot just that much better. But I really appreciate you checking this out today. And if you have any questions about any of this, or if you come up with any other like issues, I think what we're gonna do with this trigger is actually just make it the size of the entire satchel, since really it's just checking to make sure it's within the radius. So we'll go ahead and do that. I kind of want it to be more forward facing, not necessarily out of the back, because I do like that it has an entrance. So we're gonna leave it like that. Go ahead and reset the world to double check everything works. Stop, reset, play, and come on in. Okay, so we grab our satchel. We're gonna put it on like a fanny pack, because that's the type of person I am. Just kidding. I really don't wear fanny packs. Not very often, okay. Let that go, it's in. Grab my apple. Apple's in. Okay, yeah, this is where you have to be really careful not to hit all the objects on here. So I wonder if there's a better way to do that. Like, yeah, there is. Okay, let's go one step further. We're gonna take this just another step further, because why not? So I'll put that in here, grab that, let that go. Grab that, let that go. Oop, not close enough. Perfect, I'm glad that worked. Okay, like I'm glad it didn't work. I wanted it to be that sensitive. So what's happening here is you could just do that, and they all just fall out, except for this sword for this strange reason. Maybe push the sword up. Weird. Yeah, that's strange. But let's go ahead and first get stop, reset, play. Let's make it so that the only way you can get an item out is if you're holding the satchel. So that way, if you're walking around and you accidentally touch it, so this is basically just setting up another Boolean. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and try using a player variable to check if the player is grabbing the satchel. So what we're gonna do is create a script called Satchel grab. And now we're going to first go ahead and check when object is grabbed by player and when object is released by player. All right, so we've got grab start and grab end. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna set player persistent variables. If you haven't worked with player persistent variables, they're very powerful, highly recommend them. But here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go into our settings frame here and go to settings, go to player variables, create a new variable, and we're gonna call this grab. Okay, grabbed. Press save. Now player variables are kind of expensive, so there are some ways around this, but this is definitely the easiest method to check if the object is grabbed. So now what we're gonna do is go set grabbed to 1. So 0 will represent it's not grabbed, 1 will represent it is grabbed, and we set it for the player that has grabbed it. Now we're gonna go ahead and do that again, but in reverse. So when grab in, set to 0 for the player that has released it. So this is going to determine this value. And now when we go into our item, but first let's actually go make sure that we have this script attached to our object. So we'll go into our satchel and we're gonna go make sure that we have grabbed, satchel grabbed, and put it down as our script. So it's attached, perfect. And now that we've attached our script, let's go into our original script and we're gonna go and add an additional equal sign. So what we're gonna do here is grab an if statement, drag this over to save it for later, grab the and statement. So this will say if this and this. We're gonna grab a new equal sign. We're gonna grab this, put this here, and we're going to go ahead and grab a number input. So remember, we're checking to see if the value is 1. So it's 1 there. And we're gonna get player persistent variable and make this and change this to grabbed. And that's why we had player here. So we grab player ID. So get user persistent variable grab for value player if it's equal to 1. Now let's go make sure that retrieve is sending the correct player ID. So go when event retrieve is received. Retrieve is coming from up here. It's connecting local event retrieve, which does come with it, and we know that it comes with it because in our retrieval script we also have position of player hand, and that has been working wonderfully. So perfect. Let's go ahead and start this up. So go ahead and reset the world. And we're going to come in and grab our satchel, grab our sword. Sword goes in, let go of the sword, touch it, and it's not leaving. We can grab it again and then touch it, and now it has returned. We can put it back in. We can place it on our person. We can not get it out if we're walking around and we accidentally touch it. We can then also grab it, release it, put it in, and then grab like an apple, put that in, another apple, put that in, pumpkin, put that in. Now the issue you're going to have is that these triggers are maybe a little too big for this, but we can still put it on. Yeah, so the triggers should probably be lifted off. So that way it's not triggering when you put it on your body and all your items just fall off. Whoops. So there's that. And then attach. Said attach. Hey, there we go. I only lost the sword. But I needed it anyway to fight a monster. So I definitely think the answer here is making these triggers smaller. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so let's go ahead and jump inside of the object. Now that we are in, let's go ahead and adjust these triggers. So go hit, let's see, click on it once so you can select it and not worry about selecting other things. And we're going to make it relatively quite small. Zoom in again. Unselect that item. Click, there we go, selected, and grabbing the bottom and lifting it up just to the top. And yeah, okay, so hopefully that solves that dilemma. We'll go ahead and do that again over here. Now that we have much smaller triggers, let's see if that has done the trick. All right, so let's go ahead and test the stats. So we grab our satchel, grab our sword, the sword in. I might have accidentally adjusted that a little bit, but you can see it comes right out. Grab it. It's a little bit more finicky, as you can also see. Like you have to kind of more swipe your hand through. So we'll go ahead and just try to point at it. Yeah, if you hit it right in the center, it works really well, but not so much on the side. And then if we put it on ourselves, it works a little bit better. So it's not just triggering. I'm assuming if you push it really far in, it is going to trigger, but it's a lot less likely to. So that works a lot nicer. And remember, you don't necessarily have to make this an attachable object either. I mean, there are other options too. So like someone could just carry it around. Or you could have it so that, like I said, there was another trigger that had to be pressed, like pressing the button there. But look at, now we can attach it. So this actually works really well. You can see that if I swipe my hands through, nothing's happening. And jumping around. But the moment I pick it up, I do have to be a little bit careful. So you have to be a little careful, like, look, whoops, just dropped my pumpkin. Now I can put the pumpkin back in, but I still needed to make sure I'm grabbing. So it might even be wise to build like kind of like a carrying handle that you can hold up here or something, like so build like a little loop, a sash, and that would be another good option. I'm kind of a fan of this simplistic aesthetic, so I'm gonna leave it like this. But I really hope this has helped you guys out and shown you some of the really cool features. Look at, we have 4 objects stored in here. All those objects disappeared. You can swipe through, make them come back. I love that throwing down fruit. That's so fun. But yeah, if you have any questions or if you're having any trouble, please be sure to let me know, and I'd be happy to help with anything else that you guys have any questions about. If you wanted to, you can always make this bigger. Like imagine if you made a giant backpack, you know, like a really big one, you could have like 20 items stored on it. That would be really cool. So I look forward to seeing what everybody comes up with in the community, and thank you so much for checking this out. Bye.